Hi everyone, welcome. As you know, I'm Rebecca. I'm the Bee Biosecurity Officer for Queensland. We're also joined tonight by Kerry and Susie, who are helping me out with the production. Now, this is going to be my last talk for a little while. I'm heading off on maternity leave in just a few weeks' time. Very excited. But I will be sad to have a bit of a break in our online talks. Now, if you're signed up for our online talks newsletter, you'll get a notification when the talks start up again. And of course, we'll also continue to have those Facebook posts letting you know what's going on. And while I'm on leave, and any time from now really, you can go ahead and start using our very special dedicated email, which is b.biosecurity@daf.qld.gov.au, and this will go through to one of our bee staff. So if I'm not around, it will get answered. Of course, you can always contact the call centre, which is a really good place to go as the first port of call on 13 25 23, and that way you'll make sure that they will send you through to someone who's on call at the moment. So tonight's talk I'm really excited about. We're going to be talking about the launch of the Queensland Hive Surveillance Program. This is a program that we're just getting up and running now, and I think it's going to be a great benefit to Queensland beekeepers, as well as, there'll be knock-on effects for people in other states as well. So I'm going to start by giving just a really quick, brief overview of the whole thing, and then we're going to go through in detail step by step. So if you're interested either in becoming, signing up for the online, the Hive Surveillance Program, or if you might just be interested in using our portal, this is going to be a bit of an introduction for you. So the program is all about us requesting beekeepers to submit information when they're monitoring their hives on particularly any pests and diseases they found, but also that the fact that they've done that monitoring, they've done that surveillance. There's an online portal where you enter that information, and we're going to provide you with some support, some equipment, some training in return for regular reporting on what you find and when you undertake your hive checks. So why have we decided to go ahead with this? Well, many of the other states have something similar in place, and it's really important that we have a good understanding of what surveillance is going on out there that's being undertaken by our beekeepers, and to try and find pests and diseases early through people reporting. So of course, as we've talked about in many of these online talks, we have quite a big risk coming from exotic pests. So things that might come in from overseas, of course, in particular varroa mite, we're concerned about. We want to try and find it as early as possible, and part of that finding it early is having our beekeepers undertake regular surveillance. So the program is all about facilitating beekeepers to do that and giving you a reminder to do those regular checks, particularly for varroa. We also want to be able to gauge what kind of and how much surveillance is actually occurring, where we might need to focus more effort on surveillance or more encouragement on surveillance, so that we're making sure that particularly our high risk areas are getting good levels of surveillance, and we've got a good coverage of the state as well. Now, I often get questions from beekeepers that go along the lines of, how common is chalk brood in my area? Or when is AFB the biggest problem? Or is sac brood something I need to be worried about in September? So I often have to sort of say, well, we don't really know a lot of the answers to these questions because we don't have a good understanding of the prevalence and how frequently these pests turn up and when they turn up, particularly some of our more common endemic pests, things like sac brood and chalk brood and small hive beetle. And so to be able to give beekeepers a much better understanding of this, and for us to have an understanding of it as well, so that we can fight some of these pests and have better strategies against some of these pests. We'd like people to start giving us some of this information about when they see different pests in their hive and to what extent those pests are there. So this is going to give us a better understanding of prevalence of endemic pests as well. And in turn, we can then communicate that back to our beekeepers so that they have a better understanding of when their hives are at risk, whether or not that's having an overall kind of calendar of when things are risky, or knowing when, for example, if there's a wet period, we need to be looking for this particular pest or disease. And also, if we get an outbreak of something, we can let people know that, you know, your area, there's an outbreak of this pest or disease and you need to be on the lookout. So there's going to be a lot of benefits that will feed back to beekeepers from having them tell us when they're doing hive surveillance and what they're finding in their hives at that point in time. So how does the program work? Well, the first step, if you're interested, is to register your interest in the program. So that email that I put up earlier, the Biosecurity one at DAF, you can just send a quick email through to that one and state that you're interested, and I will email you out the information package as well as our sign-on form. And of course, I've still got a few talks that I'm giving at beekeeping clubs if we get out of lockdown. And so at those talks, I'll also have some of those sign-on forms if you want to pick one of them up. And I'll be providing them as well, of course, to your local beekeeping clubs. Now, to sign on onto the program, there's just a fairly brief form, and we're asking for some contact information and some information about your apiary. And once we have that information, we're going to contact you to organise you to undertake some training. So just to give you an idea of what type of information we're going to ask you on that sign-on form, we'll ask you, of course, your name. We want to know your HIN or your hive identification number, and all beekeepers should have one of these because they should be registered, and when you're registered, we'll send you a HIN or hive identification number. We'd like a phone number and an email so we can contact you, as well as a home address. And we also are really interested in knowing whether or not your bees are located exclusively at your home address, if maybe they're located at another fixed address, or if they're located at multiple addresses. So if it's at home or another fixed address, we'd like to know where those bees are. And that's particularly for mostly our hobby beekeepers, which don't move their bees around particularly often. Whereas we know our commercial beekeepers might have multiple locations throughout the year where they're keeping their bees. We're also keen to know if you're a hobby or a commercial beekeeper, so we know what kinds of beekeepers that we're covering and around how many hives you have. If you've just got a few, of course, that number is probably pretty stable, but some of beekeepers with much larger numbers might need to estimate a little bit about how many hives they have. We also want to start with the sign-on form is getting a feel for how well you think you can identify a range of pests and diseases. So these are some of the key ones. So whether or not you think you could identify them, you have some confidence, or you're very confident. So if you have low confidence in being able to identify them, we want to make sure you're up in that higher level of confidence by making sure you get enough training in these areas. And that's one of the, I think, perks of this program, is to making sure that beekeepers feel confident in their ability to identify these pests in their own hives. And of course, we're going to ask you to, in return, give us some hive checks. The next step, once you've signed on with the sign-on forms, we'll be giving you some opportunities for training. So some people may have been trained already in doing the sugar shake and the alcohol wash and feel quite confident, and that's fine. But we'd like to make sure that everybody who's signed up is confident. So this might include training at small group sessions, or if you really can't and you are quite keen, we may be able to provide some one-on-one sessions with you to get you up to speed and make sure you understand particularly how the sugar shake and the alcohol washes work, as well as doing that brood inspection. So once you feel confident, we can have you on board to start really entering data regularly. So what will that training cover? What do we want to make sure that you know how to do? A brood check, of course, is really key, as well as the alcohol wash, sugar shake, and drone uncapping. How to identify pests and diseases, so what they're looking for and what you need to look for, not just the pests and what it looks like, but of course the symptoms and signs of those as well. We're also going to cover how to enter information into the portal, and if you're pretty tech savvy, what we go through tonight might be sufficient for you and you might be happy with that. But I know sometimes people struggle with what needs to go here or there, or how to navigate through it. So I'm happy to sit with you and help you figure that out as well. And of course, how to manage some of these pests and diseases, the endemic ones, if you do find them, so things like chalk brood and nosema. As part of the training, we'll also provide you with some equipment, so a sugar shake or alcohol wash jar, some fact sheets and some sample submission forms, of course, as well as some ability to send in samples. So some filter paper for sending in samples from sugar shakes and alcohol washes, and some small sample vials, particularly good for sending in samples of AFB and EFB. The next step, once we've got our beekeepers trained up, is to go out and undertake those hive checks. So if you sign up to the program, what we're really requesting you do is a minimum of 4 hive checks. This is spread over a 2-year period, and we'd prefer it if you can do it in October or April, but not such a big problem if you don't. Just let us know. And these checks will need to include a sugar shake or an alcohol wash at least. If you want to do a brood inspection, other inspections as well, that's great. We'd also love to have that information, but the bare minimum we're talking here is 1 hive from your apiary, including a sugar shake and alcohol wash, 4 times over a 2-year period. We would like it though if you could let us know and record in the online reporting tool anytime you want to do a sugar shake, an alcohol wash, a drone uncapping, a brood inspection, or you look in your hive for scavenger pests, or you do some honey sampling. This will give us additional information, and we'd love to have that. So anytime you do surveillance activities, you're more than welcome and very much encouraged to enter that data, even if it's not those 2 times a year when we're requesting that you include that data for us. So when you're undertaking surveillance, what are some of the things we'd like you to be looking for and then reporting in the online portal? Well, firstly, if you can have a look at outside the hive, look for signs of dysentery on the outside, so staining on the outside of the hives, bees crawling around the entrance, or bees with their wings at odd angles, or bees with swollen and greasy looking abdomens. These can all be possible signs of nosema. So this is one of the diseases we'd like you to sort of see if you can see any signs of. And also, if you've got any large numbers of dead or dying bees around the hive, of course, this might indicate possible pesticide poisoning. So also, that's another one that you can record in our additional text boxes. Inside the hive, when you open it up, if you can do an internal observation, and if you notice nasty little pests like ants or wax moth getting around your hive, or small hive beetle, or large hive beetle. These are all ones we want you to keep an eye out for and report. And then, of course, a brood examination is really important. So what we're looking for when we're doing a brood examination is the difference between healthy and unhealthy cells, mostly cap cells, or also the larvae, so if you can see the larvae. So if there's any indicator of disease, and this might be sunken or dark brood cells, or brood cells with holes in their capping, particularly around the edges, have a closer look at those. Open the cells up gently with a matchstick if they're capped already, and see what's inside. If you can see larvae that look dead or mouldy, that's an indicator that there's a problem. Have a closer look. Or if there's some goo in there, that's a bit of a problem as well. If it's not a healthy looking larvae lying on its side or pearly white, we want to have a closer look at that. And some of the diseases from a brood inspection that we want you to report back include American and European foul brood. And that's one where you might get, when you stick your matchstick in a cell that's a bit dodgy, a thick, ropey, caramel kind of goo. We also want you to look out for chalk broods. And chalk brood will look like a hard, shrunken larvae, usually covered in kind of a mould, and it can be anywhere from white to grey to black coloured mould. It can look a bit like bread mould. And also sac brood. So sac brood is a tough, fluid-filled sac, and sometimes it can be quite watery looking, but as it ages, as it's been there longer, it'll kind of dry up and shrivel up and look a little bit less watery and a little bit more like a dried sac. So those are the key ones we want from a brood examination. We also want you to look for external parasites of bees, and this includes a drone uncapping and a sugar shake or an alcohol wash. So when we're looking in there for these external parasites, we're looking for 3 main ones: brawler fly, varroa, and tropicolaps mites. And so we're going to provide, as part of that training, a guide on how to do that and to take you through doing a sugar shake or an alcohol wash, as well as those drone uncappings, which are quite a nice secondary check. So once beekeepers have gone in and checked their hives, we really want them to download this information into our online portal. So you'll be sent reminders if you've signed up to the Hive Surveillance Program to let you know, hey, it's time. And I'll chase up any beekeepers who are kind of late and just remind them again, hey, it's time to do your hive checks, because I know it can be really, with a lot of things going on, remembering it can be a bit of a struggle. If you stop keeping bees, no problem. I'll show you in a minute when we go into looking at the portal. There's an option there where it just lets you say you're no longer a beekeeper, and it'll unenroll you, so we'll stop hassling you. Now, what is this online portal? It's part of a larger online reporting tool developed by Biosecurity Queensland, which allows the public to report pests and diseases of both plants, animals, insects, a whole range of different things. One of the components in here is this hive surveillance. So it lets you report when you undertake surveillance, and if you find something or a pest of some kind, lets you report that pest. So I've got a couple of different ways that you're able to access the portal. One of them is through a QR code, and I'm going to put these on the welcome packages as well as on the top of the sugar shake jars, and I'm going to have them on the back of my business card as well, so that people are able to access it really quickly and easily. Now for tonight, if you want to have a go, if you've got a phone or another a device that's not the one you're watching tonight's talk on, you want to kind of follow through with me, feel free to have a go at this QR code, and any of the data that's entered in tonight, I'm going to disregard. I'm just going to say it's test data and people are having a go. From tomorrow though, I'll make sure that any of the data that's gone in there has been checked and comes through to us. So if you want to have a go tonight, don't worry, that data will be disregarded and you can have a bit of a play. You can also, of course, go in through the DAF website. If you go into the DAF website, I'll show you exactly what that looks like in a minute. And of course, there'll be links from local clubs, and hopefully the QBA will also be able to put up some links for us, so that there'll be lots of links up there to let you get there quickly and easily. So if you're coming in through the DAF website, it looks a little bit like this. It says, report a biosecurity pest or disease. And there's lots of different options we've got here. We've got animals, aquatic or marine, plants and insects. And what we want to choose for a hive surveillance, getting to the hive surveillance program, is to choose insects. And then you've got ants or bees, so choose bees, of course. And then you'll have two options, bee sightings or hive surveillance. Now the bee sightings is if you've sighted an exotic bee, go into that one. The hive surveillance is if you're doing a hive check and want to put that information in. So you probably can't see very much of this, but I wanted to show you what the whole page looks like when you go into the first part of the hive surveillance. Now let's zoom into where you put in your data. So the first question it's going to ask you is, what best describes your situation? You've got a couple of options here. You can select if you're a beekeeper, if you're no longer a beekeeper, or if you're a DAF employee. So most of the time what you're going to need is that you're a beekeeper. So this is just where you're going, I'm a beekeeper, I'm here to enter some information about a hive check I did. If you're no longer a beekeeper and you want to disenroll from the program, just choose the I'm no longer a beekeeper and we'll take you out. And of course, just DAF staff for the DAF staff employee link there. The next question is about when you undertook the hive check. So that's when you actually check the hive, not when you're inputting the data into the portal. We also would like to know your HIN, your hive identification number. This is just another check to make sure that we've identified you correctly. And if you're someone who's signed up to the program, the hive surveillance program, that we've counted that you've entered your data and I don't hassle you to enter it later. If you can give us the total number of hives at the site where you did your checking, that would be great as well. Even if it's just an estimate, that's quite helpful. We're then going to ask you the number of hives you checked. Now, it's a little bit different. We don't just type it in here. We're asking you to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or more. And so it's asking that because what we want you to try and do for us is to, if you're doing up to 10 hives, to include the information about those hives, specifically what you checked, what pests you found. And if it's 10 or more hives, we don't want to know all of them. We'd just like to know any additional things you found. And this will make a bit more sense when I show you how it runs in a minute. So if we say we put in 2 hives, it'll come up with hive number 1, and it'll ask you how you examine that hive. So did you do a brood inspection, sugar shake, an alcohol wash, or a drone uncapping? So you can select 1, 2, 3, or all of these. You can, depending on what you did when you went in and looked. And then we're asking about a bunch of key pests or diseases that we're really keen to know about. These are varroa mite, AFB, American foul brood, EFB, European foul brood, chalk brood, and sac brood. And you can select that either you detected or suspected the pest. So if you found it, great, you can tick that one. But even if you just suspect it, you got in there and you went, oh, it looks like it's not so good, I think I've seen it, you can tick that detected or suspected, and we can follow it up if you're going to go and send some tests through to the lab. Another option is not detected or suspected. So you really don't think it's in there. You're pretty sure you didn't see any signs or symptoms of that pest or disease. And then our last column is not examined for, because sometimes you forget to look. And it's really important that we know how many different pests and diseases you actually looked for, as opposed to ones that you're saying you didn't detect or suspect, but you didn't look for it either. So that's really important. And then you can apply these same results to the rest of your hives if you found the same thing in those hives. If you didn't, then it'll come up with hive number 2, and you enter that data for hive number 2. And again, you'll get options if you want to apply it to the rest of your hives, right up to 10 hives. So after 10, we don't need you to fill it in anymore, but we will say, are there other pests, diseases, or symptoms that you detected or suspected? So that's a great spot in this text box at the end. If there are additional things that aren't in that list that you want to add in, so for example, you had a heavy infestation of small hive beetle, add that one in there. If you had, 10 hives that you found, you just had chalk brood, and you had an additional 3 hives that you didn't enter the data for, and they had sac brood, you'd put sac brood in here. So that's just the place to put any additional pests or diseases you came across, or symptoms if you're not sure what the pest or disease was. Then we just want you to let us know if you send a sample away for testing to the Biosecurity Sciences Lab. And then there's a section here that you don't really have to use if you're not really keen. All of the other forms that are on here for reporting for other types of species, they're requesting a photograph, and we don't really need a photograph because we know most of our beekeepers will be able to identify these pests and diseases. It's an option if you'd like to put one in there, but don't feel that you need to. And then finally on this page, we're really keen to know the location of your hive. So where was the hive you checked located? You've got a few options for putting this in. You can, of course, use a street address where you just type in what the address is, and if the hives are at your home, this is probably one of the easiest. But sometimes it's not that easy, I know. Sometimes they're in a very large property. They might be in a national park or a roadside. And so for that, another option you can do is to drop a pin on a map. So you can zoom right in to the area you think the hives are and put that pin on there, and it'll then let us know where that is. Now, the next option there is provided here is a website address or online location. Now, this is not one we use for our beekeeping hive surveillance. It's included in here, unfortunately, as part of the set options that are given in this question for all the other pests. So we can just kind of put a line through that one. That one doesn't really apply for us. The final one, though, is a lot number or GPS coordinates, and often that can be easier for beekeepers. They know what the lot number is, or they know or can easily take a GPS coordinate. So any one of those options, you can let us know which one those that is. Pick one and fill in the information. That will let us know where that hive is located. Then we'll move on to the next page, and it'll ask you for your name, of course, and that will help us in a couple of different ways. If you have a notifiable pest or disease and it hasn't been sent through to the call centre, we'll be able to give you a call and we'll find more details. But also, if you have signed up to the Hive surveillance program, of course, this will allow us to be able to say, okay, yep, Joe down the street, he's done his hive surveillance and he's all good, so I won't hassle him anymore. So that's this way to link us up. Address is really good here too as well. Of course, not necessary, but it will be helpful if we can't kind of match your name for any reason. Let us know how you'd like to be contacted if we need to contact you, and then provide that contact detail, whether it be a phone number or an email. Now, I'm going to now go through a few FAQs because I know there's probably some things that I've kind of skipped over. And so I'll start with these and then move on, and you guys can ask me any questions you have about the portal. So for a start, what if you can't check your hives in April or October? I know sometimes the weather's not good. We've got beekeepers in Queensland everywhere from Stanthorpe to Cairns. Often the date of that time period's not good, or maybe you've been busy or away or can't get to your bees. That's fine. I'm going to contact you with a reminder, and you can just say, hey, Rebecca, I can't do it just then. I'll do it at this point in time, and no worries. We're kind of nominating April and October for getting the most number of people we can doing those hive checks those periods of time, because they are the optimal times. But if you can't do it in those times, that's fine. What if you no longer have hives? Well, I think I hopefully have answered that question already. You can just log on to the portal and select the option that says I'm no longer a beekeeper. You may have to then enter of course, your contact details and your name and your address and things, so that I know who it is that's no longer a beekeeper and who I should not hassle anymore for their hive surveillance data. What if you find or suspect a notifiable pest? So I've got some of the key ones listed here. In particular, we've got varroa mites, tropicalaps mites, tracheal mites, and exotic bees. If these are, you do find these in the hive, go ahead and put it in the portal, but we also want you to straight away call the DAF hotline on 13 25 23. Now that's because these are exotic pests, and if they are here in the country, we want to jump on it really, really quickly. We want to send someone out to come and have a look and try and stop that pest spreading really quickly. So if any of these pests come up when you do your hive checks, also if you can call the DAF hotline as well, that will be incredibly helpful. American foulbrood disease, on the other hand, you can report it in a range of different ways. So if you just want to put it in the portal, that's fine, that's sufficient. If you want to call the hotline, you can do that. You can also call your apiary officer or me, your BBO, or you can send a sample to the Biosecurity Sciences Lab. That's largely because this is the only one of these ones that is really endemic to Queensland, and so there are a few options there. But if you have any of those exotic pests, you must also call the DAF hotline straight away, just because we want that very quick turnaround and we want to make sure we've got all your contact details correct. Can you enter information at other times? Yes, anytime you like. Anytime you go and do a hive check, do hive surveillance, we're more than happy to have you enter that information. So you might check your hives every 4 to 6 weeks. Feel free to put it in at that time as well. The other question I think some people might ask too is, do I have to sign up to the hive surveillance program? No, you most definitely do not. Feel free to go ahead and enter the data without being part of the program. We are really happy to receive any of that hive surveillance information that you have. And you may want to start, checking now, even though you might not feel confident about your sugar shakes and the alcohol washes, feel free to go ahead and report on your breed checks. These things are still really, really useful data. And so how will your data that you enter into this portal be used? Well, your contact details for a start will be used to confirm that data has been entered for people who are part of the hive surveillance program. So we've got their information, we're right to go for that particular period. And it will also be used if, whether or not you're in that program, to contact you if you report a notifiable pest. So if you, for some reason, haven't sent it through to the call through the DAF hotline, or if you've got AFB, we might give you a quick call to talk about what you need to do about that notifiable pest. Our pest and disease information, what's going to happen with that one is it's going to be de-identified, so we can't know, so people don't know which bit is attached to which person, and lumped into geographic areas. just to give us some idea in those local areas about the patterns of disease prevalence. So we sort of want to know, okay, month to month, when we're seeing different diseases pop up in different areas. And hopefully that information will then, once we've got enough of it, we can start being able to get some really good data on it, to be able to notify beekeepers not only of those overall patterns of disease prevalence and what they should be looking for at different times of the year or after different weather events, but also to notify beekeepers of outbreaks in their local area so that they know to go and check for their bees. So that's kind of what I want to cover tonight about the portal. Of course, if you're keen, send us a quick email and I will send out the sign up information for you. If you're then not sure, that's fine. You know, you can always pull out, but we'd love to have some beekeepers start sending us in some information. And of course, if you don't want to sign up or you're not ready to sign up yet, you're still welcome to have a go at the portal tonight, have a play around. Or if you would like to go, next week, go to check your hives, start putting some information in, that's fine. We'd love that as well. Now, while I'm away, of course, you can also send emails through to this generic bebiosecurity@daf.qld.gov email, and that will go through to someone with some bee experience to be able to get back to you and answer your questions. And of course, the call centre is always there. Now, I'm just going to zoom back quickly to where that QR code was for anyone who is keen and wanted another go at having a click at that one. And I'm going to move on now to some questions. So let me just give me a second. Very much. All right. Do we have any questions coming in here? First question from Tom, can I make my presentation available for download? Most definitely. So I will have it in the hands of our tech team, our web team tomorrow, and they should be able to have it up on our YouTube channel very, very quickly. If you want a PowerPoint of the, a PDF of the PowerPoint from tonight, also that's fine. Just give me a quick email and I can send it on through to you. Quick comment from Jason. Jason's excited about the portal. So am I, Jason. And so I'll definitely, when it comes to sending out those reminder emails, make sure that we have full details there about what you need to do. So quick reminder, you need to do hive surveillance. Don't forget, these are the things to do each time you go through. And we will have a bit of a checklist there for you so that you don't get there and forget which components are important. So another good point from Jason is to be able to download and have interactive dashboards and so you can look at your local area. These are all things, of course, I would love to eventually get to. At this point, we're very much in a try it and see. And so we're keen to have people have a go and see how it works. To see how much data we get in and make sure we're getting sufficient data to be able to give good data back to beekeepers. And then we want to look at some of these sort of more interactive and feedback tools. So that's down the line definitely for us to be considering. Okay, so Fiona's asking, is this enough for our recording requirements for hive inspection, or do they need to write it down in a book? That depends a little bit on your circumstances. So for commercial beekeepers who are taking their bees interstate, who need to meet the code of practice requirements for recording, they still probably will need to do some recording about their hive checks, as well as things like their training. If you're in BeeQual, there's probably additional things that you need to do as well. And we're hoping, I've talked to the people at BeeQual, which is the quality assurance for the beekeeping industry, and they are keen to link the two different apps up so that we can have information that's shared. And so that's something we're going to look into in the future that hopefully will help feed both of us with the information that we need. So for now, it will depend a bit on you, your circumstances. If you're a hobby beekeeper, you may just want to use this tool to record your hive surveillance. You can't necessarily go back and look at it yourself though. So you probably do want to have a little bit of a record of when you check your hive last and what you found in it. I'm working on ways that this might be something that beekeepers might be able to use in the future to be able to record and go back and look at it. But at the moment, it doesn't quite have that functionality. So we'll see how it goes to start with, to have it recording and feeding to us, and then what we can do to feed it back to beekeepers in the future. Will this program be compulsory in the future for a beekeeper to properly register? At the moment, we don't have any particular plans for it to becoming compulsory. However, that has happened in other states, I know, and that's probably why you've asked that question. For now, we just want to get some data there and see what we're able to, get out of it, and see if we can try and make sure that we're getting some data back to our beekeepers about what's going on out there with pests and diseases. So for at the moment, there's no particular plans for it to be compulsory. Thanks, Maggie. Maggie says, I'm very keen for the program. That's really great. It's good to hear some people are keen to sign on for. Somebody's asked me how long I'm going to be on leave for, and I knew this might be a question that come over. At the moment, it's probably going to be around at least 8 months, and I'm hoping to then come back sort of part-time. So I'm very sad to be leaving for a little while, but I definitely will be back and raring to go when I get back at the other end. Good question. Another one here is how many hives are required to be classed as commercial? Usually we say 50 hives, but if you're got less than 50 hives and you sort of write on your tax return that you're a beekeeper and you're getting income from it, then you would be classed as a commercial beekeeper. So generally say over 50 hives, unless you're doing very, very well from a much smaller number of hives and consider that is your profession. Excellent. So we've had some fantastic questions tonight. I'm really excited about launching this portal because it's a way that we can really start to get some information back to beekeepers to be answering some of these questions that we all want to know about pests and diseases in our hives and how we can manage them better. I'm hoping that everybody is able to continue to do all the great work they have been doing, checking the hives while I'm away, and of course use all of those links and information and numbers I've given you to continue to talk to people at DAF. We've got some fantastic apiary officers and other bee staff that will be able to help you while I'm away, and I look forward to talking to you all again, hopefully in the very near future when I've had my little bub.